The silent exam you didn't know you were taking. You are positioned in a crowded room, smiling and nodding, but inside, it feels like a radio picking up 500 separate stations all at once. The noise is deafening, not inside your ears, but inside your gut. People might hint that you are too sensitive or need to toughen up, but that's often just a lazy way to dismiss a depth they don't totally grasp. The reality is much stranger and significantly more profound. You aren't just surviving a rough patch or dealing with a hyperactive nervous system. You are in the middle of a rigorous, invisible evaluation, a test of consciousness that no university offers and no therapist can completely explain. Researchers and philosophers have studied this phenomenon for ages, sometimes calling it individuation or a second birth. But let's name it correctly, a spiritual recalibration. For an empath, this process often feels like you are falling apart, but you are actually breaking through. It is a transformation that leaves no physical mark, but completely rewrites your internal programming. Here is how you know you are passing the test. The shift from isolation to refuge. The first sign appears when you stop running from the silence. For a long time, being alone probably felt uncomfortable. As an empath, you might have spent years scattering your energy, trying to stay connected because the quiet triggered a deep sense of dread. You checked your phone every 3 minutes, you said yes to coffee dates you didn't want just to avoid sitting with your own thoughts. But then the switch flips. You suddenly realize that solitude isn't an empty room, it is a full one. You start to crave the quiet, just like a diver craves oxygen after staying underwater for too long. This isn't a sad withdrawal, nor is it hiding from the world out of fear. It is the realization that your own company is actually the most interesting conversation you can have. Look at it like this. Before, your energy was like a leaking faucet, dripping validation into everyone else's cup. Now, you've fixed the plumbing. You can go to the cinema alone, sit in the dark, and feel totally whole without needing someone next to you to validate the experience. You stop needing noise to prove you exist. 2. Aligning with the shadow. This is where things get interesting. The next clue is that you stop trying to look perfect all the time and start being real. Society often tells empaths that their value lies in staying agreeable and soft. But inside, you have a shadow, a part of you that holds anger, ambition, and the capacity for force. In the past, you probably pushed this down, worried that if you stood your ground, people would leave. Passing the test means you stop hiding that strength. You realize that your rage isn't always a mistake. Aimed right, it is a fuel source. It is the fire that builds boundaries that were crossed. Picture a situation where a colleague takes credit for your work. The old you might have stayed quiet to keep the peace. The new you feels a surge of irritation, but instead of stuffing it or exploding, you channel it into a calm, solid correction. You see that you have the capacity to be formidable, and because you know that, you can choose to be peaceful. That is real strength. A harmless person isn't virtuous. A dangerous person who keeps their sword in the scabbard is virtuous. 3. Becoming Teflon to drama. The next shift is huge for anyone who feels vibes deeply. You develop an immunity to projection. We all know that one person who treats their emotional baggage like a game of hot potato. They don't want to feel it, so they toss it at you. Before, you would catch that potato every single time. You would feel their anxiety, their guilt, or their stress as if it were yours. You would spend 3 days recovering from a 20-minute talk. But when you are leveling up, you turn into a pane of glass. You can watch the storm spinning outside, you can acknowledge it is raining, but you don't get wet. You see people perform their emotional tricks, the guilt trips, the passive-aggressive comments, and instead of spiraling, you just observe. It is almost scientific. You think, look at that. They are throwing their insecurity at me. Interesting. You don't fix it, you don't absorb it, you just let them keep their own baggage, because you finally understand that carrying it for them blocks their own growth. 4. The instinctive control. The fourth sign is that you stop asking for advice in an area you already know. For years, you might have relied on pro and con lists, logic, or asking 5 different friends for suggestions before making a decision. But as you go through this change, your intuition, that empathic insight, moves from the passenger seat to the steering wheel. You start trusting the vibes more than the spreadsheet. Think of a case where, on paper, a business deal looks perfect. The numbers add up, the partners are smiling, the contract is standard. But your stomach drops. The air in the room feels stale. The old you would have ignored that feeling to seem rational. The new you walks away without looking back. You begin to notice that life organizes itself in curious ways: synchronicities, chance meetings, and precise timing. This isn't magic, it is just you finally tuning in to the frequency you were designed to catch. You stop explaining your gut feelings to people committed to misunderstanding them. 5. Vitality management and the strength of no. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, you get selective with your vitality, and that is a good thing. There is a myth that being an empath means acting as an endless reservoir for others, like a 24/7 store for emotional support. The final stage of this test is managing that inventory. You develop what is called energetic sovereignty. This means you treat your aliveness like a bank account with a finite balance. You stop spending your spirit on projects, people, or arguments that offer zero return on investment. Remember that guilt that used to eat you up when you said no? It fades. You understand that protecting your peace isn't an act of aggression, it is an act of self-preservation. You might lose friendships during this phase. People who liked you for your compliance won't like your boundaries. But you will find that the ones who remain are those who respect the vault, not just those trying to break into it. The judgment. If you recognize these shifts, the comfort in silence, the acceptance of your shadow self, the immunity to drama, the trust in your gut, and the guarding of your strength, then take a deep breath. You haven't just been struggling, you have been evolving. You are peeling away the layers of who you were told to be to reveal the person you actually are. It isn't about becoming perfect, it is about becoming whole. The test was never about how much pain you could endure, it was about figuring out if you could turn that pressure into power. And if you are listening to this, it looks like you are already turning into the alchemist. So stop apologizing for the changes, you earned them. I am curious, which of these signs hit home most for you? Let me know in the comments below.